Happy New Year. It's a little bit late, but I forgot to say that the last time, so I figured better late than never. So here you are. So today's story is called Nana Had a Nini. When I was smaller, I couldn't say Kaninchen, which is the name for a rabbit. So I would always call them Ninis. My father was now living with us. Of course, he didn't have any work like so many men in his position. And he had become friends with a lady that was about 3-4 lanes over from us. She had a very big garden, and her husband was missing in the war. She had no idea whether he was alive or not. And she had to do something to make money. So she had converted it's like a sunroom into a little bar restaurant. I liked this room. It had all windows. It was very narrow and long, and she had all these little tables and chairs. And the local men, like my dad and so many others that couldn't find work, and some of them, couldn't really walk. They were still walking with crutches. One guy that came a lot his arm was gone. And so these guys would usually meet in the afternoons and, drink 2 or 3. And sometimes she would fix something like a little appetizer or something, but they would sit there and play cards and talk to each other because they, didn't have anything else to do. Well, I used to like to go over there. I liked this lady. And she had 3 cats, which, oh boy, there you go. I was very happy about that. I didn't have a kitty yet, but that would soon change. That's another story. But she had Ninis, like I called them. And I used to feed them. Oh, they were so sweet and soft. And I was allowed to take them out of their cages, and they would go out in the garden with me. And it was just really fun. And the lady was sweet. She didn't have any children, so she used to let me come in the kitchen and I would help her. I would peel the potatoes or, clean up the carrots or something like that. And then I started helping her clean out this little cafe or whatever you want to call it. And I spent a lot of time there because, I was just by myself. I didn't have my job in the nursery yet. So one day, my mother said, oh, Nana, that was the name of this lady, has invited us for Easter. Isn't that sweet? Okay. So everybody, my grandma, my mother, my dad, and I, we all went to her house for Easter. And we got there early in the morning, and she asked me to do some red cabbage, so I cleaned it up and I cut it, and then she asked me to peel potatoes, and then, of course, as usual, like at my house, of course, I set the table, and then some other people came, and it was really fun. They were all talking and laughing, and somebody had bought a bottle of red wine, and my dad said, oh, do you have a really little glass, because, we got to give her a little bit of wine. And it was lovely. I liked being there. I liked all these people. I was the only kid, so I was like this token child, and everybody would say, oh, and what's your name? And really, Aranka? Oh, wow, I've never heard that. Where's that from? And it was sort of fun to be with all these adults. And I enjoyed being there and talking to all these people, because most of the time, I didn't see anybody except when I went to school. And then, of course, when I came home, there was nobody there. So I had a really, really good time. Well, so finally she says, oh, let's go out in the garden. I want to show you. I planted some new trees. And so we all went out. And I was just having a really wonderful time. Then, while we were out there, I thought, oh, I should really feed the Ninis. I could say Kaninchen at that point, but I still called them Ninis. So I went to all of their cages, and one of them was gone. And I thought, oh, that's really weird. So I asked her, I said, Tanta Nana, one of the Ninis is gone. Did it escape or something? And all of the adults sort of looked at me and started laughing, and I couldn't figure out what that meant. And I said, where is it? It's not in its cage. I tried to feed them all. And she said, oh, you'll find out in a minute. So we're all sitting at the table, and she asked me, well, I wasn't sitting down yet. She's asked me to bring in the red cabbage and then the potatoes, and there were carrots, and it was all really pretty and festive. And then she said, okay, go ahead and sit down. And my mother said, no, you forgot the gravy. So somebody ran back in the kitchen, and then she comes with this huge platter, and there's something on it. And as I looked closer, it was a Nini. I was so stunned that I just burst into tears. I got up and I ran outside. And my mother came after me, and my dad came out, and he said, you know, it's okay. You know, that's what the Ninis are for. And I was just shocked. I didn't know that they were going to be eaten ever. As far as I was concerned, they were like a cat. You didn't eat your cat either. Of course, later when I got older, I found out that was wrong too. In some cultures, you do eat them. But when I was a little kid, I did not know that, and I could not be consoled. I just said, okay, I'm leaving now. And I went home. They stayed there. And I went to an empty house, and I sat there with Vilya, and I said, Vilya, you know what? I think we need to leave because they'll probably eat us too. I was so heartbroken, and I could not stop crying. I kept hugging my dog, and I kept saying, from now on, I'm always going to keep you with me because I can't believe they ate a Nini. I'm so upset. Well, then finally my parents came home, and my dad said, I'm really, really sorry that you got so upset, but you have to understand there's very little food now. People eat all sorts of things. And I said, well, do they eat little children? And my dad said, no, they don't eat little. Well, do they eat dogs? And my dad said, no, they don't eat dogs. And then my grandmother in the background says, yeah, but they eat horses. And I burst into tears again, and I went, I'm not sure I want to live here with you. This is really terrible. And my dad just kept hugging me, and he said, you know what? This is what it's like to grow up. You learn things that you don't really like, but that's part of turning into an adult. You're just having to turn into an adult when you're still very little. You're only 6 years old. You shouldn't have to deal with this. But this is, you know, there was a war, there isn't much food, so I'm really sorry, but no, you know, your dog will never get eaten. From that day on, I still visited Tante Nana because I really liked her, but I fed the animals, and I would say, are they still there? Did you eat another one yet? And she would say, no, don't worry about it. And at one point, she actually replaced the one that had disappeared. And I didn't find this out until I was much older. Whenever she would take one and cook it, she would get another one and put it in there. And I would say, you know what? I don't remember that one being that color. I was too little to figure out what she was doing. She didn't want me to know that, yeah, they were really there to be eaten. So that was my story. And of course, I could never eat a Nini, and I never have, and I never will, because every time I would see something like that on a plate, I remember this experience, when how traumatic this was, that there was this Nini on the plate. That's my story. Bye.